Hello and welcome back to Tricolor Gaming with me, Fletcher. And welcome to another park tour. This time, this is going to go around the Canadian Reserve. Now this is a park I was building on stream and I haven't been back to this park for a bit of time actually. So people haven't seen it in its finished glory. So I thought it was about time that I did a bit of a park tour around this place for everyone to see what it looks like now that it's done. I've got the park shut to guests so we can have a look around at a good FPS, and we're just going to have a look around the whole park today. So let's get started. So I thought I'd start with going through an overview of the park, looking at it from above as well, and going through what my plan was for this build, because I haven't actually got a park on the Canadian map yet. So the purpose of this build was really to create a more of a reserve style park. And what I mean by a reserve style park is that it's not really aimed at providing the best guest experience. The point of the park was that it was to provide a good experience for the animals that were here. And the idea was that all of the animals in this park are going to be animals that have been saved from the surrounding area. The other idea was also to try to maintain as much of the natural beauty and natural elements of the map as possible. So that you might recognize the big lake in the center. That lake has always been on the Canadian map. I've just made it a little larger and used it as the entrance area. I've tried to keep most of the forest in place as well, including areas down by the hotel there, just coming up in the center of the screen. But that was really the idea for this map. Keep as much of the natural environment as possible, but also to create nice enclosures for the animals that are going to be inhabiting them for a long period of time. So you can see this as a bit more of an ethical park idea than a guest park idea. So let's start at entrance level, and I'm going to look around the park in the free cam rather than the first person view, just because it's a little easier to move around. But this is the entrance to the reserve. It's a simple guest plaza. You can see I've made use of the Jurassic Park Operation Genesis fountain, just as a nice little decorative touch. And around the edges we have plenty of bushes to line the path, and the use of the lagoon, I'm not sure what to call them, sails I suppose, or shell sort of shapes, on either side, just to create a nice sort of wall effect essentially. We've used a lot of planters around this particular park, and we also have a bit of a garden here with some Albertosaurus statues that are just here, as well as with some lighting that are just here for a nice decorative flair. And if I zoom out a bit, you can see how that comes along in the little entrance zone here. Basically, that is the entrance. And directly opposite here you have obviously the lake. The lake is a predominant feature of the entrance area of the park. There's plenty of planting around the lake, and the island in the middle I've used for some statues of dinosaurs which are lit up in the dark, and we'll see how the park looks in the dark a little later on. Let's go round to the left first of all, because this is where I started the build on streams to begin with, was to the left. Again, I've used plenty of the large bushes to line the path, and we have the first of the small amenity areas. A lot of the amenity areas in the park have the flag statues next to them. And we've gone for this sort of light pale green and white colour scheme because I thought that was just a nice sort of colour scheme to go for, something that can kind of blend into the environment, that's not too gaudy or bright, Just something that's subtle. And again, we have some basic seating outside, picnic tables with the umbrellas, and plenty of the Canadian, I think these are silver birch trees, along with the planters. So as we head round the island to the left, you get the first of the enclosures, and you can see with the amount of plants that I've had to manually place down where the enclosure starts. So it's not, again, got a massive amount of guest sort of build up. I didn't want to use any of the massive galleries. So what I used is the Jurassic Park Operation Genesis gallery from the JPOG mod. I like the please don't feed the dinosaurs sign. We got a little bench here for seating, some natural green lighting. But actually, if I go and have a look up here on the top of the gallery, you can see it's quite a simple gallery. It's literally just a view out into the enclosure. There's no glass or anything. And inside of here, we have Parasaurolophus. I'll just have a look, give you guys a look at the enclosure from above. So you can see their enclosure. It's a bit small, to be honest. I think I was trying to limit size when I was first designing this enclosure, because I was nervous about making any of them too big. But I think if I was going to make some changes, I would continue the enclosure around to a bit more over here, so they got a bit more room. But basically, we have a very simple enclosure with plenty of the redwood trees and sequoia. They've got a rock archway here as well, which they do go through when they are walking around, just as a bit of environmental enrichment. And we decided on stream to have some males with the blue stripe patternings. This is obviously the Dominion Parasaurolophus with the blue, and the females are the brown with the white stripes. Some animals have male and female variants, some do not, but we wanted to go for a slightly natural sort of herd for the Parasaurolophus. And obviously they have really beautiful views. I mean, if you're viewing from the viewing gallery here, you've got this beautiful view of the mountains and the lake beyond. So if we head down past, so these little rocky outcrops in the island, they've got fountains on just for a bit of movement in the lake. But if you head a little further down, you can see we've got a nice little garden area again, backlit with green lighting and a Parasaurolophus statue. And then inside of here we have a seating area and glass windows into the enclosure. My idea for this would be that this would be one-way glass, so the Parasaurolophus would not be able to see through the other side as well. Only the humans looking in would be able to see what's going on. And this is lit by blue lights, which again gives a nice effect in the darkness. I'm going to continue going round to the left of the island, of the center island and the lake. See, we've got a Dreadnoughtus there on the edge. And we've got another amenities area here, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see what it looks like from above. So in the crook of this, the ramp up to the next level, again lined with the large bush, we've got the flag statues around. We have simple seating and a fountain arrangement. Fountain's got a Eutyrannus in it, which I'll explain why in a minute, but that is a species that's already in the park. So we decided to put them in the fountain. We've got some benches around it as well. We've got some Pachyrhinosaurus guarding the lavatories. And we've got a Camarasaurus here looking over the two amenities, or the single amenity actually. I think it's a gift shop, which occupies this area. We'll go up to the next level in a minute. Let's start back at the entrance actually and head round to the next direction. So here we have the next exhibit. And this is the Eutyrannus exhibit. And if I zoom out, you can see how we've made this. We've basically got this line of wall sections and planting, which acts as a gap between the path and fencing. And then inside the enclosure, we have a very simple lake island with a viewing dome in the middle. And we went for quite a redwood sequoia filled enclosure. Not too many trees here. We gave a concrete wall backing just to add to the realism. And there are multiple ways of viewing this enclosure. You can view it from the upper level through these viewing galleries, which we'll come back to in a minute. Or you can make use of the viewing dome here instead. And I think, did we go for male and female Utyrants? We did. So here's the females, they're just blank pattern, and the males we gave the white stripes to. And I think there's a few Utyrannus in here. I think it's 1 male and 2 females, potentially. But yeah, that's the Utyrannus exhibit. And as you can see, so it's bookended by this little guest plaza here. This provides access to the Utyrannus viewing dome. You have a nice fountain arrangement here with Spinosaurus skull. And we also have glass windows overlooking the next enclosure on this side. This enclosure I had a lot of difficulty with. It's a very long enclosure, but what I wanted to do with it was I wanted it to be primarily viewable from the upper level so that people can look down into the enclosure. But I also didn't want there to be lots of fencing along this path. I wanted it to try to be as natural as possible. Initially, we just had concrete fencing, as you can see, running along the edge of the enclosure, but I thought it looked really ugly after a while. So, thanks to a suggestion that I think I got in stream, maybe I got it off stream from another Evo moderator, Colt, who suggested lining the concrete with plants. And I actually really like how it ended up looking. You can see you can't really see much of the concrete fence at all. It looks very natural. And we've also got these glass window cutouts so you can have a look inside. And I think there are 2 of these cutouts alongside here that really just work to give you a view into the enclosure. The enclosure itself is a long sort of river enclosure. We've got a water source running the entire length of the enclosure. And in here we have Camarasaurus, again male and female variants. I believe this is one of our female variants of the Camarasaurus. I believe our male variants are speckled with the white. And we also have Pachyrhinosaurus. We have the blank female patterns in here. And let's see if I can find a male somewhere. There's one. The males have this wonderful blue and yellow. This is their natural pattern, but thanks to Glitch's FGM changes mod, it gives it the Shonisaurus colors, which just really make it stand out a lot more as a male Pachyrhinosaurus. And the enclosure has some decorative elements, a fountain at one end to create the water. We have like a little mock rock archway as well halfway down. It's kind of collapsed slightly. Just some decorative flair to this particular enclosure just for enrichment. And yeah, overall I was really happy with how this enclosure ended up looking. So that's basically the lower level of the park. This is the entrance area. Now let's head up to the next level, and this is where the park really expands. So you've got 2 forest-lined paths, or 3 forest-lined paths, which lead up. And in the center, you have the main large lagoon. Now if I just zoom out a little bit, you can see how this area is formed. So you have a sort of heart-shaped lagoon, which forms the front And along the edges you have sort of planting and guest areas, and then to the left and the right you have continuations of the park, and then above you have another enclosure which is formed by the edge of the map, but also one side being the lagoon. Let's drop back down to guest level and have a look first of all the area around the lagoon. So again, some simple decorative seating areas made with the lagoon sails, and we've also got a bit of a benched fountain area here, which I quite like, sort of relaxed, sort of almost Zen garden-like-esque sort of feel to it. More guest plazas over here, with another entrance to a viewing dome in this particular area, which we'll get to in a minute. Either side of the lagoon you have plenty of planting and gardens here, formed from a mixture of all the vegetation types. And then either side of the lagoon galleries you have plenty of guest seating and fountains again. And if I just go to the other side, it's basically the same thing. More gardens. I kept this patch of forestry here because I didn't want to make another guest plaza. I wanted some forest, some natural woodland. Same over here, we've got a natural sort of water source here. There's nothing in here. It's just natural woodland and water source. And guest seating near the lagoon. The lagoon itself, I am especially happy about. So we've used the concrete flag poles around the edges just to give continuation of the use of these around the amenities and such. And it's backlit by the flaming obelisks. And we have a few species in here. I'm sure you can see what the first one is. So we have archelons here. And what we've done on their little island is we've given them... So this is like a mock heat generator. So it just generates warm temperatures for them, because this is Canada, obviously, so it's going to get cold sometimes. So that creates some warmth for them. And if we go inside the lagoon, we can see how I've decorated it. So plenty of the wonderful kelp mod by Max Veers around the fake island for the Archelon. And then in the middle of the lagoon, we have this rocky archway that sort of cuts it in half. Again, covered with more coral and lagoons and kelps. And then over on this side, we just have a little patch of kelp with a whale skeleton and a couple of rocky pillars. And there are some other animals in here. So these are the wonderful Mortornerians. This is a mod species of plesiosaur, but Mortorneria was featured in David Attenborough's Prehistoric Planet show, and these were the ones we saw in the Arctic sifting mud. Obviously here they hunt for fish, but I just like having another little stout plesiosaur in here. He uses the Attenborosaurus rig and model, obviously, but slightly elongated flippers and a shorter neck and a different head shape, and I think it's a reasonable mod. And also living alongside them, we have the Devonian period fish. I believe this is Bungaripterus, or Sungaripterus. Is Sungaripterus Bungaripterus? Hang on, I think I've got the name wrong. Let me switch to camera view. Let me have a look. Bungartius? Bungartius, there we go. Which comes from the Devonian Predators pack. Again, another mod. But this was just to give the other animals something, something smaller, fish-like to swim around with. The Mortorneria and the Archelons. There's a mating pair of Mortorneria. So the male has this back stripe and the female does not. And the Archelons, again, there are male and females. So I believe this is the female variant. We went with the blue and the brown. And I believe that the male variant which is around here somewhere. There we are. The male variants have more blue patterning to them. So yeah, that was how the lagoon turned out, and I think it's a pretty decent lagoon. Now, either side of the lagoon, there are guest areas. So there is a single guest plaza over here, hidden behind these trees. A couple of smaller amenities, another fountain, seating area. This one I put a Therizinosaurus on the roof of, just to distinguish it. As you're coming around this bend, obviously, from guest level, you'll be able to see the Therizinosaur on the roof. And a bit further down here, again hidden behind the trees, which hides the enclosure beyond. But at the very end here, we have a guest toilet, and we have the JPOG viewing gallery, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And if I go to the other side, so you can see here, we have a much larger guest amenities area. I'm especially happy with how this shirt turned out. The use of the tree lagoon decoration, which gives natural subdivisions where you could put guest seating, I think worked really well, and I really liked how this ended up looking. And again, a couple of rock archways and such, and Dreadnoughtus, and another, on this side at least, a viewing gallery area with two viewing galleries, a seating area, and a little Archelon statue just to symbolize the lagoon. Right, let's go and have a look at the view from that lovely JPOG viewing tower. So I absolutely adored the JPOG viewing tower. I think these are far superior to the traditional viewing towers that we have in game. I just think they have a much better design. I think it suits more the Jurassic Park style with the thatched roof. And I love the fact that it's a four-way viewing area. You've got those binoculars all around to give 360 degrees view into everything that might be around this particular enclosure, or tower, sorry. And I just think it's a far superior design to the tower that we currently have for Jurassic Park. But what does it look into? Well, it looks into the Mapusaurus enclosure. And for this, we went for a sort of geothermal spring-like enclosure. There are two Mapusaurus in here. The male Mapusaurus has this wonderful orange and blue patterning. There's the male. And the female Mapusaurus, we went with something a lot blander and a lot less colourful. To make the geothermal sort of effect, we went with plenty of placeable fog patches. We put down some of the aquatic geothermal vents because they create natural gas and such. And we also buried some Jurassic Park Operation Genesis fountains. We buried some fountains down into the ground as well for a few geysers. And around we have lots of dead trees, smaller bushes, and at the very back of the enclosure, hiding the back of the lagoon, we have some other trees, and thanks to Kai's expanded sandbox mod, placeable burnt foliage from the Biosyn expansion, which again comes with its own smoke effects and fire effects too, which just really do enhance the idea of this being sort of a volcanic geothermal spring area. And I think it looks really good and suits the Mapusaurus, I think. And obviously if you want to look at it from the other side, you can have a look through again the JPOG galleries looking down into this buried sort of enclosure. Away from the lagoon area to the left, like I said, we have a viewing dome entrance here that goes into the enclosure that's just behind this set of trees here. And this is another depressed enclosure with Tarchia in one, and I believe this is LA Studios' Tarchia. And again, we have male and female variants in here. The female variants, we have the black and white. skin, and the male variants, we went for this slight green and yellow tinged skin. They have quite a simple enclosure, a small watering hole, some tall trees, and a rock archway as well, just to give them something to sort of the enclosure to have a bit more interest. And this is where the viewing dome entrance comes to. It comes to this viewing log, which gives you a ground perspective of the Tarr Enclosure. It didn't have to be too big, again, this Tarr Enclosure. If I was remaking the park, I think I would probably give them a little bit more room. Potentially make the area over here a bit smaller and give them just a little bit more room. Or potentially give them more room to this direction. But in the end, I'm happy with how this turned out. This area ends with the entrance to a JPOG visitor center, but for me this is not quite a visitor center. I see it more as a museum or some sort of similar sort of experience, maybe somewhere where they have lots of dinosaur fossils and such inside. And it also serves as an entrance to the tour trucks, or the trucks that will lead you to the other area on the other side of the park. You can see how I've decorated this sort of drive-through section with Brachiosaurus. And around the visitor center itself, we have these little sort of garden, almost hedge mazes with pterosaurs. Plenty of Jurassic Park flags and paraphernalia. Some lanterns in the fountains going up towards the building. And the actual tour vehicle itself is attached to the back of the visitor center building. This does create a few minor issues with getting guests to the other area of the park, but there are ways around this. On the other side, well, we'll look at the other side in a minute. So where does this tour actually go? Well, the tour leads around this sort of dividing area that divides off the one side from the other. And I wanted to keep as much of the natural woodland and forest here as possible. So what we did is we had a truck tour that goes through this area, and literally there's nothing really in here apart from statues. So you can see we've got Carcharodontosaurus there, we got Brachiosaurus as a statue also here, and it's just kind of like a statue park or a monument park. Guests would just be driven through it, to see what they can find. On this particular side we have some Memenchisaurus there. We've got those wonderful Alamosaurus as well here. Quite close to that one. And then a bit further along we have some Triceratops. And then a bit further along, a couple of Wuhasaurus here. Not Stegosaurus, Wuhasaurus. Corythosaurus, which really is a dinosaur I don't think gets enough love. The Corythosaurus, so we've got quite a few of them here as a proper herd. And as we go a bit further down, we have some Huangosaurus here. And some Olora Titans as well. And again, it's just to create a sort of natural... Oh, and some Torosaurus at the very end. Just to have quite a natural sort of statue park area, and then we get to the next tour building. So this area on this side of the park is literally quite small. It's devoted to two enclosures. One the aviary, one a non-aviary. We have a small guest section, and that's about it. So, leaving the tour building, you have this nice little, again, guest seating area immediately outside. And then we have a fountain here, And this, I think, gives away the animal that's inside our dinosaur enclosure, Albertosaurus. So if you go around this fountain, we've got a couple of seating areas behind it. Amenity area on the left-hand side, all three typical amenities. We got some seating here and some lighting as well. And then you have a much bigger seating area with fountains and glass windows looking into the Albertosaurus enclosure, which is in there. The rest of this is just lined. Again, we've done something similar here that we did with the Tyrannus enclosure. Created a foliage barrier between the fencing and the path, which is something I've been really enjoying doing and I want to do more. And we've got plenty of bushes as well lining the path. A viewing tower to look into the Albertosaurus enclosure from there that's surrounded by trees, so it's a little less vulgar. Got a guest bathroom here. The placing of an additional guest entrance just to get guests over this side of the park, because I was noticing no one was here. But what I imagine this would actually serve in the real park is, again, perhaps this is like an indoor cafe or a shop or something similar to that. And then this path ends up here with this guest seating area, this fountain. And this is the only way to actually gain entrance to the aviary. So the aviary is basically cut off. The only way into the aviary is through there, which leads to the viewing dome that's inside. But what we do have at this end is a gallery from a lagoon. And this overlooks the Albertosaurus enclosure, so you get a nice open air experience of the Albertosaurus enclosure. And I went for some considerable decorative touches here, so we've got lots of Mayan towers and statues. We've got a few derelict buildings as well in the water. And obviously you've got the glass windows on the other side looking over. And here are our wonderful Albertosaurus. I think we went with the blue skins. So there is our male variety. We went with the blue skin and very patterned. And our female has no pattern. Essentially, a very, very subtle pattern. And the back of the enclosure, we've got some ruined buildings just for some decorative touches. And a floodlight inside the church bell tower to illuminate it in the dark. Now, like I said, there's no way of viewing the aviary without going into the dome. And inside here, we have a mock mangrove swamp or mangrove beach enclosure. Because we didn't have mangrove trees, I've used some of the Mediterranean trees and sunk them down into the grounds a bit, which works quite well. Here we have that lovely lagoon viewing dome, which I think works just as well above the surface for especially aviaries as well. And in here we have Tropiognathes, and I believe we also have Barbaric-Dactylus. Yes, so we have male Barbaric-Dactylus with the coloured crests. Females have no coloured crests, so that would be a female. And the Tropiognathes, so that's the female. I'm just going to pause it so we can see. That's the male skin hair for the Tropiognathes, which just have the crested colours, and the female does not. But yeah, just a simple enclosure for the aviary species. I think it turned out reasonably well. We've got some, again, the steam patches just for a bit of artistic flair, and fountains as well to generate water. Overall, I'm happy with how this enclosure turned out. And that is basically the whole of this side. And then you would obviously get on the tour trucks, which would take you back around past the statues. I think on this side there's a few extra other species. So as we head into the forest here, we've got again some Triceratops. But I think we've also got somewhere around here, yeah, a couple of Spinosaurus. And we have obviously those lovely Mamenchisaurus. And I think we have an Acrocanthosaurus up here as well. A couple of acros watching on. And then that would lead you all the way back to the viewing visitor center and the entrance. So, off to the other side then, past the patch of natural woodland, you're walking perpetually alongside the Camarasaurus and Pachyrhinosaurus enclosure. And then we have another hidden enclosure on the left. Again, you got lovely glass windows that give you a view into the enclosure. On the right hand side, you have the viewing galleries that overlook the Eutyrannus enclosure, as well as this seating area for the Eutyrannus enclosure as well. Now inside here, we have some Homalocephali, cute little Homalocephales, male and female patterns, and they are living alongside Stegosaurus. Again, Glitch's FGM mod has worked wonders here to give the Stegosaurus some decent coloured patterns. And for their enclosure, we wanted to give it a sort of a Lost World feel. So plenty of redwoods and sequoias here. Gave them a waterfall just because I wanted something a little interesting in here. Yeah, a sort of Lost World inspired Stegosaurus enclosure. Now as you go further down walking this way, it becomes less animal heavy, and this is sort of the quieter end of the park. Now, we'll go through in there in a minute, but if we continue along and around, you can hear the birds more here. You got more planting, more forest, a small guest area at this end, just home to a couple of amenities. And this overlooks another lagoon, again decorative touches around the outside. And this is a single lagoon section, and in here we just have some Noasaurus. And again, in here we went with Noasaurus and Tencanthus as to, you know, have a bit of fish representation again in here. And again, we've got plenty of kelp. We got plenty of rocky archways, that sort of thing. I think a couple of our Noasaurs got stuck. That's a little unfortunate. But these are the female Noasaurs, no patterns. And the male Noasaurs have these wonderful red and green patterns. I don't know why the Noasaurs keep getting stuck. There does seem to be a problem over here. I'm not sure what's causing it. It could just be a problem potentially with where I put the kelp, or it's a problem with the AI. I don't know, but certainly Noasaurs do keep getting stuck along this side of the enclosure. And then if we leave the area and we head back around to here, we have this little forest path that skews around through the trees. Again, this would be lit in the dark by the concrete lighting pillars. And when you get to the end, you have a nice Jurassic Park sign, some brachiosaurs guarding the entrance, and this leads around to the hotel section. And this hotel section is really the pretty much the entirety of the rest of this build. So we have 3 hotel pieces. We have 2 that are joined back to back to give us a sort of walk-through hotel-like effect, and then 1 on its own over here. Plenty of seating around the outside, This I am especially proud of though. So this is a geothermal hot spring for people to sit next to swim in. We have some simple changing rooms here using the placeable restrooms, decoration restrooms, but I'm using them as changing rooms here. And then we have a Noasaurus and a fountain arrangement, some fire pits, and this fountain arrangement which people could sit on, use for seating, the Noasaurus, and some fire pits in here as well. Overall, I'm really happy with how this little geothermal spring turned out. Oh, and around the edges on the rocks you have some pterosaurs as well, just for decorative effect. So all in all, I think this particular build turned out pretty good. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch the lighting off so that you guys can see what this looks like in the dark. So in the dark you can see just how much color there is to the lighting around the park. Now I do want to point out this is using Kyodenic's mod, which makes the darkness much darker. Much more atmospheric, I think. But you can see here just how the lighting around all of those glass windows looks so cool with that neon blue backlight. And let's just go and have a look at some specific areas. So here we got the Huangosaurus being illuminated in green, the blues around the sails there. All of the fountains obviously illuminated in the lake. The illumination around the guest areas, mostly through natural lighting like the obelisks, but also around the fountains. The blue light around the glass for that sort of UV effect. The flood lighting around the island, just to highlight the statues that are present here. And the soft orange lighting that I've tried to use around the guest amenities as well. And you can see how a bit of colour from the lights really do help just to enhance the park. And maintains that atmospheric feel as well, thanks to the darker nights. Lots of lighter blues, but also whites and oranges. All of the glass areas are illuminated with the neon blue. We've used a lot of green here as well to illuminate certain parts of the park. And yeah, I just think it works. It has worked really, really well. Got some, makes the fire look really good. This darkness mod. But also, you do have to place down. I found the floodlights are the best way of illuminating parks with this particular mod, because the normal lights just do not have enough luminosity, for want of a better term. And you can see more of the blue light there. And if we head over to where the hotels are, plenty of white lights. And lots of green and blues again to illuminate the seating areas where people would be enjoying the geothermal springs. So yeah, I think not enough people look at their parks in the darkness. I think it really is part of park design to always think about how your park is going to look in the dark, and think about what people are going to see when they're walking around in the dark. Especially if you want to sort of view these locations as being open 24 hours a day for people to wander around. What they look like in the dark is just as important as what they look like in the daytime. So yeah, I think it works really well, and I'm pretty pleased with how this particular build has turned out. Again, lots of the UV blue lighting here just to illuminate the edges of that pathway. Oh, and there you can see the use of the floodlight in the bell tower, just for a bit of atmospheric lighting. So yeah, I think it's worked out pretty decently. So yeah, I can tick Canada off as having accomplished a park I'm happy with on this particular map. And as you all know, on stream I've moved on to be looking at a park on the Grand Canyon map. So that's the next one to get a park on it. But yeah, I'm happy to finally have a park here on Canada. Let me know what you think of my build, and if I've given you guys any ideas of what to do for your future builds, or even returning to Canada to build your own park. Don't forget to give the video a like, and while you're there, subscribe if you haven't already done so, for more content from all of us at Triclaw Gaming. But until next time, and at the next tour, stay safe and goodbye.